All right. Hey everyone, how's it going? Getting started here in just a second for episode 2 of the Formlabs Community Round-Up. I'm very excited. Thanks for joining us. If I look over to the side here, I apologize. That's where my chat is. There's nothing that interesting happening over there. Steve, welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. Glad to see you here. I don't want to butcher your name. Aloy? Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Glad to have you here. Welcome. Thanks for coming. All right, so yeah, we'll get started, and if more folks are coming, and that'll be great. So let's get started with the agenda here. Similar to last week, I'm going to get started with the agenda here, and we're going to go through the intro like we did last time, episode 2. Figure there's still some people who are figuring out what this is and what's going on. And yeah, as far as the agenda goes, start with an introduction, go to some user-generated content, some highlights, things like that. Then we're going to go on to some Formlabs product updates, some other content highlights, places where we'll be soon, places where you can see more of us, more information, things like that. And then any events going on. Then we have a 20-minute interview with a formling, Seth Berg, engineer from the Formlabs Fuse team. And then at the end, if we got some spare time, we'll finish up with some Q&A. I'll hang out. We'll talk about 3D printing. It'll be a good time. But let's get started. So to get started, what is this? What is the Formlabs Community Roundup? Great question. The idea is just to come up with a forum where we can have a little more one-on-one interaction with our community, where we can talk about what we're working on, what's going on in the world of Formlabs. Answer questions from the audience. And yeah, we're developing it as we go. The idea is to keep this session morphing and evolving to cater to what fits you guys best, to what you want to see out of something like this. Really quickly, I know I did this last week, but I'll do it again just in case. My name is Dan Kirchgessner. I'm the community manager here at Formlabs. I've been at Formlabs for about 4.5 years. I joined the company in 2016 on the customer service team. I answered a bunch of support emails for a couple years. Eventually, a year and a half or so ago, a little more than that, I moved over to the marketing team and became the community manager. Other stuff about me. From Boston, Massachusetts, went to school in Oregon, have a degree in philosophy, because, that's where you end up. Well, if any people have more questions about what my history, where I'm coming from, let me know. Happy to answer them. Slick Wolf, great question. Are you asking in reference to 3D printing specifically, anti-aliasing? If you want to give me a few more details about what your question is, I'm happy to answer it. Good question. While they're typing that out, I'll move on. Metal Fury, hello, hi. All right, cool. Slick Wolf, great question. So, anti-aliasing is a weird thing with SLA 3D printing. Because it's a laser, you really don't have the effect that anti-aliasing presents most of the time. Anti-aliasing comes from pixels, where you have a stair-stepping pattern between pixels, and therefore a smooth edge becomes jaggy because it's following the line of the pixels. Because we're using just a circular laser spot for Formlabs 3D printing, at least, you don't run into any of those sorts of aliasing issues. DLP printing, on the other hand, because you're projecting an image through resin from a very, very bright LCD computer screen, you can run into some stair-stepping. It's pretty minimal these days. People are getting pretty good at tuning it out. But yeah, great question. All right. So, let's get started with some cool user prints. This is some stuff, and I'll mention before I go any further, I have a ton of links in the description below this video to everything I'm talking about here, and I think it's all in order. So, if you're having trouble finding a link, please let me know. I'm happy to find it for you, but everything should be down there. This model in particular came from our forums, from a company called All on Scale Models in the Netherlands. They make scale models of essentially anything. I was reading through their website earlier, and it was anything from cars, trucks, planes, oil derricks, wind farms. They do a huge variety of scale models. And this was one of them. So this is a Ferrari concept car model that they did on the Form 3L. So you can see the model on the sides here, and in the middle you can see what it looked like during printing on the 3L, which is really, really cool. They were able to get the entire thing into one build platform, which is a good testament to the size and scope of the 3L. Additionally, they did a really terrific video on the whole process of this model and the painting and how they got this really beautiful smooth finish on it, all that kind of stuff. So that video is linked in this description below as well. I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's really interesting. They do really, really cool stuff, and it's always really exciting to see what people are working on. And yeah, love seeing forum stuff because the forums are another aspect of my job. Quick look at chat over here. We're all good. Excellent. All right, next one up here. This isn't a user part. This is just a suggestion we got on the forums, and it's one we've seen before. Folks were asking about preheating the Form 3 before you start a print. And it's a great question. It's a feature that exists on the Form 2, but not on the Form 3 yet. I don't have any news to offer in particular on this example of feature. We know it's requested, and features similar to the way the Form 2 handles preheating are absolutely coming to the Form 3 in a future software update. I more wanted to use this as an example of the sorts of threads we see on our forums, the types of feature suggestions we get from our users, and to say, please keep doing that. We absolutely read all of them, keep track, follow them. I try to reply back into the thread if a feature does get implemented, so at least everyone knows that it happened. But yeah, in general, I keep it pretty close on the forums. We love to see stuff from users. Whether you're happy or not happy with our products, please, please, please give us feedback there. Let us know how we can improve. That's how we know. If no one tells us what we can do better, how can we? And look, it's great to see you're thinking about buying a Formlabs 3D printer. That's awesome. Are you looking at the 3, the 3L, the Fuse? What's catching your eye right now? Next one up here is just a really, really stunning piece of work and a selection of work. This is from an artist named Daniel Bell. He's a digital sculptor and the art director at Sideshow Collectibles in California. If anyone is familiar with Sideshow, they are known for making the highest quality, most beautiful models, maquettes of movie characters, video game characters, just big, beautiful models. So Daniel Bell is the art director for Sideshow, and he very recently got a Form 2, so he's been experimenting with printing. And as you can see here, these results are absolutely incredible. We were passing these around the office when we saw them, just because we really couldn't get over the detail. Things like the hand in the third model there, the detail is just amazing. And I say that not even in a like, hey, look how good our printers are, but more in a look how insanely talented a ZBrush modeler Daniel is. We're really, really excited to be talking to him about stuff, and yeah, just really cool models. If anyone is curious about more of Daniel's work, please feel free to check it out. There's a link below to his Instagram, and I think you can get to his other portfolios from there as well, and absolutely worth looking at. Just really, really cool stuff. And yeah, like I said, he's doing this off of Form 2. I'm not sure if he's getting a Form 3, but man, I can't wait to see what he does with a printer with even higher fidelity. Just amazing, cool work. This last one is pretty personal to me. I'm someone who grew up being pretty enraptured and inspired by Mythbusters. If anyone's not aware, Adam Savage of Mythbusters has a website called Tested, and a YouTube channel. It's where he posts all of his current work, things like that from his workshop. This video that I pictured here is linked below. It's actually not about our printer at all, but our printer, the Form 3L, you can see there the background is working the whole time while Adam is talking, and you can hear it sort of doing layers as he goes. And yeah, just for me personally, a really amazing moment to see someone I looked up to so much as a kid and still in terms of making cool stuff, and that's a lot of what our community is about. It meant a lot to me to see our product in his shop as a tool he's using like this. And yeah, just a really cool thing. I think the actual video this is referencing is a weird COVID prevention helmet he was testing out or something. There's a chance he may do more stuff specifically with the 3L in the future. You can bet if he does, I will be sure to mention it here so everyone can keep track of it. Because it's just really amazing stuff. Slickwolf, yes, totally. We're gonna get into some Fuse stuff, and I have some details coming later this week as well about where you can get a ton of Fuse information. If I don't answer your questions today, I can show you a Fuse print in a little bit here as well if you'd like to see one. A couple quick product updates. Not going to stick around on this one too long. I realize this is a pretty niche product for us, but it's cool to see. We recently added in the last couple of weeks a new resin to our dental line. So this is a resin that will work specifically on the biocompatible printers we make, the 3BL, the 3B, the Form 2. This resin is designed for indirect bonding trays, so it's used when orthodontists are setting up the brackets that will hold some braces in someone's mouth. Typically, those models are done via other methods these days, but we really think this is an awesome way to streamline that process, make it easier for the user and the doctor, both. Really cool. If folks have more questions about dental resins, please let me know. Myself or my coworkers in the chat will be happy to point you in the right direction. I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be. It's a very different world than a lot of what Formlabs works on, but still really cool to be able to print stuff that goes directly into a patient's mouth. It's really exciting, and it's fun to see what our materials team comes up with. John P., great question. Great question. So John P. asks, I see a lot of materials are at 100 microns. Any materials capable of higher resolution? Really great question. It depends on the material, depends on the use case. Most of our biocompatible resins, I could be wrong on this, but I think most of them are at 100. The reason for that is that that's as high as you need to go. 100 microns provides all the detail you really need to get dimensional accuracy for even most medical parts. And that's true across all Formlabs resins and materials. There's very few situations where you need to do 50 or 25 microns rather than 100. 100 provides really excellent dimensional accuracy. The only time I really recommend doing a lower micron, higher resolution, however you want to talk about that distinction, is for something like if you were printing a perfectly spherical sphere, really smooth, and you want to get a really smooth, fine surface finish on that model. That's a great time to use 25. Otherwise, though, all you're doing is making your print take longer for not a ton of gain. It's big in the jewelry market as well to get a higher level of detail. But even then, we always recommend starting with 100. Chances are it'll work for you. If it doesn't, then you can play around with 50 or 25 after that. Are you asking about Brazov? Are you asking about if we make white materials, can you dye them? Or another question? Feel free to give me a couple more details. I'm happy to get into it. While you're doing that, talk again about the fuse. I mentioned this on our session last month. Just mentioning it one more time because it's cool and it's exciting and it's a big new printer for us. We released the Fuse and the Sift. The Fuse and the Sift are currently shipping to customers, and it's really, really exciting. I actually have a small little part here, which I will hold up to the camera. This is our sample part they sent out to the whole Formlabs company. This whole articulating bull, ox, it's the year of the ox. That's why it's an ox. Was printed in one go, so nothing was assembled after the print. Excuse me. And it's all all articulated together. That's the same way you can get full sets of chainmail, things like that, out of it. It's really, really cool. Is PA12 a like a nylon, Brazov? Just so I'm aware. Currently, I believe nylon 11 and 12 are what we're leaning at only for the Fuse, which are kind of a dark gray color, which you can see here. It's sort of a sandy dark gray, but really, really robust parts, really strong, really stands up to stuff. So yeah, cool. Good to know. Yeah. Nylon 11, 12 are what the Fuse one runs. Currently only our own nylon 11, 12, which you can buy from our store. And yeah, maybe more materials in the future, but nothing to say right now on that. Right now, because it's so new, we're sticking to the really, really carefully selected and designed Formlabs nylon materials. And just to let everyone know, coming up on Thursday of this week, we have what we call a demo session with myself and my coworker who manages our Fuse and Form 3 and 3L, print farm at our office. And he has had a ton of time with the Fuse, using it, finishing parts, all that stuff. So we're going to sit down for an hour, play a little video that shows the process of printing with the Fuse from start to finish, how to clean off parts in the Sift, how to vacuum the powder, all those processes from beginning to end, and then we're going to hang out for a while and answer a ton of questions. We've sourced some questions already. We're hoping to take more from the audience, so if you want more questions answered about the Fuse that I don't get to today, that'll be a great time for that. It's totally free. Same time as this session, but on Thursday, 12 p.m., noon Eastern. And you can find a link to register for that session below. We'd love to see you there. It'll be really fun. We'll be hanging out, chatting about the Fuse, answering questions, and showing off this really cool video. I'm really excited about it. Awesome. Next up, got a 15 or 20 minute interview with Seth Berg, who is a project manager and engineer on the Fuse. So he can offer some insights as well. I'm gonna play a video. I recorded this interview with Seth last week. Play this video, and I'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoy this. All right. Hey, Seth, thanks so much for joining us today here for another interview with a Formling. We'll get right into it. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you ended up at Formlabs and what do you do here?
Sure. It's kind of a long story, I guess. I actually was an intern at Formlabs back in 2011, before the Kickstarter, before the Form 1. Really all I did at the time was help them machine parts at the MIT hobby shop, because I had access to the shop and they didn't have a real shop. So, water jetting some of the parts on early prototypes, that sort of thing. And then that was during the semester. That summer, I made sort of a funny mistake in retrospect, which is I went and I worked at Xerox for the summer, because I was like, Xerox is a big name company. They're gonna pay me a lot to be an intern here over the summer. That'll look good on my resume. And I didn't work at Formlabs over the summer, which probably would have been a lot cooler and more interesting in retrospect. Then I switched my major and I did a bunch of other things. After college, I started a company with a friend of mine. that was interesting and hard, but ended up not going great. And so I left, and this was in 2015. And as I was driving across country from where we were based back to Boston, I messaged Ian, who is now my boss. And I told him I was looking for a job. So I applied. This was like right before, a few months before the launch of the Form 2. My background was in software, so I applied for a software role, bombed the software test. But I was really excited about Formlabs, and I messaged my recruiter. I was like, look, I know I didn't do well in this test, but I really want to work here. Like, this is the stuff I'm excited about. Like, is there a role that would be a good fit? And it turned out there was. So I started off as an intern at the time on what now is the Fuse 1 program, but at the time was just a 4 or 5 person team. It was actually still a secret within Formlabs. And I was kind of doing a whole variety of different engineering. I started off designing some of our early electrical systems, writing a little software here and there, doing heater design and testing, some CAD, and over the course of the project, which was, this was 5.5 years ago, and I'm only just starting to work on something else. This is wild. I did a bunch of different engineering roles as we expanded the team and got people that were more specialists in those roles, handing those things off. And by the end of that trajectory, I was doing like systems engineering and project management. And for the last 1.5 years, have been the program manager on Fuse, which really just means sort of making sure we're doing all of the right engineering things. So it's sort of like project management, but at a program level for all of the engineering work on the printer. But as you know, and as people listening might know, we relaunched the Fuse a few weeks ago, and are shipping in large quantities to customers, which is really exciting. And so now, for the first time in my time at Formlabs, after 5.5 years, I'm working on something new, which I'm excited about too.
That's very exciting. That's awesome. And yeah, I mean, everyone's Formlabs kind of how they get here is always unique, and also not uncommon for people to like come here, bounce out, bounce back later, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I got a few people like that in and out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Back.
Cool. Next one here. Yeah, what's your favorite aspect of working at Formlabs?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's kind of cliche to say I really like the people. To be more specific about that, the people are just exceptionally smart. And when I started, that was really intimidating. I started in kind of like I wasn't an expert in any one thing role. So in a way, I always knew the least of anyone in the room. But it's a combination of that, and everyone is like really friendly and wants to teach you about what they know and what they're working on. And so over the course of my time here, I've learned just like a ton naturally through all of these like really brilliant people that I've gotten to work with. And I still often feel like I have no idea what anyone is talking about, but like I feel comfortable asking them to explain it, and that's great. I like that environment a lot.
Yeah, totally agreed. I mean, you're talking to someone with a philosophy degree who has ended up doing community management at a 3D printer company. So yeah, so many smart, amazing people who, whether work stuff or non-work stuff, people are just working on cool projects and hobbies, and it's a fun place to be. I miss the office for sure.
Yeah, I really, when we're back in the office, you'll have to teach me about philosophy.
Happy to.
Hopefully not too long. I feel optimistic that we'll be back.
Let's hope. It's been weird. And yeah, we'll ask the flip side of that question. What's in your mind sort of the most challenging aspect of working at Formlabs?
I think we're pretty uncompromising on like basically all aspects of a product. Like we need to work efficiently and not spend a ton of money. The product needs to be perfect. It needs to be, in the market a year ago. And so balancing all of those constraints is really hard and can be pretty stressful. Fuse was obviously pretty late. We launched it, and then it took another 3 years, or we announced it took another 3 years to actually ship. and that was, entirely because it wasn't up to the standards of what we wanted to ship. And in some ways, those standards continued to grow and move away from us as Formlabs grew and our products outside of Fuse got better. So that's really challenging.
Yeah.
And just balancing that with all the other constraints of running a program and a team is hard. But I think I'd rather do that than work somewhere else. I mean, there are lots of other companies who have different models. I mean, Apple's a good example. They release a phone every single year, and whatever features that can get into that phone, like they're going to use whatever resources available to them to do that. But at the end of the day, they ship a phone every year, and Formlabs is not like that. And I think I prefer doing it this way because you get to ship exactly what you want, even if it takes a little longer.
Yeah. And I think there's another aspect of I think at least in my job, and this is the sense I get from other people in Formlabs, is that there's an enormous amount of freedom to try new stuff, which is both exciting and also really scary and hard to sort of plan out how that will work as you do it. And obviously we announced stuff, and we will all agree we learned announcing the Fuse in 2017, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're right. You might think that having less constraints on an engineering problem makes it easier. But in some ways it makes it a lot harder because your solution space is super large and you need to figure out how to efficiently navigate that space and still come to the right solution, of which there are, so many more possibilities.
Right. Yeah. Especially when there is no right answer out there, you're sort of forging that path yourself.
Yeah.
I'll also mention before we go further, we did not plan to match shirts today. That's
it's funny. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got the Fuse shirt.
Yeah, the new Fuse shirt, which is great. Which is awesome. Cool. Thank you. Next one here is what was the learning, and you covered a little bit of this already, but sort of what was the learning process like for working on the Fuse? Was there overlap with products you'd worked on previously? And were there any aspects that in particular were sort of brand new and tough to wrap your head around with the Fuse?
Yeah. I mean, it's like my personal learning process. My degree was in computer science, and I was probably better at the computer science aspect than the software engineering aspect. I went on, the company I started, I was doing, some simple injection molded part design, simple electronics, and then a bunch of firmware. But it was basically a PCB in a case, and that's very, very, very different from Fuse that has over 500 unique components, sensors, closed loop controls, heaters, sheet metal machine parts, injection molded parts, like all sorts of exotic materials. So it was very, very different. I had enjoyed working on things, projects before that were more electromechanical, mechatronics leaning. And so I knew that was something I wanted to work on, but I had very, very little experience doing that. And it was definitely hard. Writing firmware is not easy, but you have a deterministic system, especially when you're writing firmware on like a simple PCB that doesn't control hardware. And some of the core problems with Fuse are like really hard physics and material science problems. We have all the print process is driven by all three modes of heat transfer. I had never taken a heat transfer class before Formlabs. We've got moving systems in a powdery environment that is at the temperature your oven is when you bake cookies. Like, it's very hot. It's a nasty environment, and everything is really close to each other, so you have to keep things cool and keep some things hot. It's just, I can't even, it's impossible to list all of these like unique challenges, but it's so different. It's so different from what I had done before. And honestly, when I look back on like some of the early engineering decisions I made, or like ways that I thought about the product, they're just like laughably wrong, right?
Sure.
In retrospect. And I'm sure I'm doing the same thing with what I'm working on now to some degree, but
that's
I guess
the fun of it, right? Is to figure that stuff out as you go.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the more buttoned up answer is like we made a ton of mistakes, and like I made a ton of mistakes and wasted a lot of time on things that weren't fruitful. And with what I know now, and like, better understanding the first principles, I would have known were waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I
I
mean,
think
as
that's fair. Yeah, for sure.
for the program as a whole, right? Like that was sort of me. What I don't want to portray is that we didn't have anyone who knew what they were doing, right? That was maybe more me. We had a lot of people that really knew what they were doing, experts in optics and heat transfer and material science and mechanical engineering. And so I think, when you zoom out a little bit, many of the challenges came from integrating all of those things really tightly together.
Yeah.
Right? It's not hard to make something that scans a laser. I shouldn't say that. It's hard, but it's achievable. But doing it right next to a really hot oven, it makes it much harder. Moving a recoder arm back and forth to spread powder is not a fundamentally hard thing, but when you do it in an oven and you introduce powder into all your motion systems, it becomes much harder. And so the physical proximity and the integration of all those systems is very challenging, and it, I think, forced all of the engineers to learn a lot more outside of their particular discipline, to get those things to work.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of those challenges come with the intended volume of production. If we were making $100,000 machine, presumably we would be selling tens a year, not hopefully hundreds a year of this machine, which is different manufacturing tolerances and all that sort of stuff that goes along with mass production, I guess.
Yeah, that's totally true. Some of the competitors in the space, these machines are so expensive, they're brought on site, set up by an engineer. The parameters are all tuned on site. Like we needed to build something that, we could ship thousands of and would arrive on site and just work out of the box every time. And really that's like in my mind what we spent sort of the last really 2 years on, was like taking a printer that totally worked, printed great parts, and making it do that every single time for every customer across every unit. And that was really hard.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it sort of leads into my next question, which was I've heard from around the company, but I don't really know the extent that we used our other printers or the Fuse in prototyping components for the Fuse. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like, especially because that process is so much of the bread and butter of Formlabs, is like small part production, prototyping, things like that.
Yeah. So when I was first getting a tour on my like on-site interview, I remember the person pointing out one part on one of our prototypes. He was like, "We printed this on the past generation. Like, how cool is that?" It's really cool, right?
Was that the part wall of like the deconstructed Form 1? I remember, I think I got a similar tour at my early time.
Yeah. But this one was actually on a Fuse. So we had like printed on the V2 Fuse. Sorry, on the V3 Fuse, there was a V2 Fuse part.
Yeah.
But at the time, the tools we had at our disposal were like some very hacky Fuse prototypes and the Form 1 Plus. And the Form 1 Plus worked, but it's nothing compared to the Form 2 or the Form 3. And so really over the course of the development process, our internal tools got better, both on the SLA side and on the Fuse side. So like by the end, it was just trivial to print any large part geometry we wanted on Fuse for the Fuse printer. And we did this extensively. It is not something I am saying because it's like a good marketing line. Being able to just print out arbitrary geometries and materials that were going to work in the place that we were using them was, it's just such an accelerator to prototyping and to production. When we were building prototype rounds of fuses, we were doing like 5 to 10 per round, and you can print a lot of parts in a Fuse build volume. And when you're only making 5 to 10 units, you can design lots of your parts on the Fuse to be printed. And so, I think we'll probably do like another more detailed piece about this, but the production fuses themselves have parts that are printed on fuses in them in production long-term. It's not a prototyping tool. This is the manufacturing method decision we made for mass production. There are some parts that we wanted to do because they're touch points and it's nice to feel the part. And it was, we had the BOM cost to do it. And then there are other parts where we wanted to use geometries that would have made them very hard to make in more traditional manufacturing methods. So that was really, really cool to see. But really throughout the course of the program, we leaned more and more heavily on 3D printing, both for prototyping systems and prototyping the printer as a whole. I can't really imagine going to work somewhere else that doesn't just have, people who might not have been to Formlabs headquarters, but there are just Form 3s everywhere. And now there are fuses everywhere, right? It's the barrier to printing something is zero. And so we do it a lot. And I find it kind of hard to imagine designing hardware without that resource. Like if I ever end up somewhere else, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that we have lots of printers to prototype with.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I know the finished nylon prints are pretty robust, but I didn't know that like, it can stand up to like repeated heat cycling from these sorts of environments and things, and it'll be largely okay. That's incredible. That's so cool.
Yeah. One of the parts that's in the printer is essentially exposed to the internal chamber. It's not at the hottest processing temperatures, obviously, but it heat cycles every print. I used to, when we were back at the office, we had a part that was a drill. It's probably on some of our websites, and when I would walk people around and show them fuse, it was on this pedestal, and I would just like knock it off every time to show that it wouldn't break.
I know Jake has been doing some videos, and he's been just tossing stuff against the wall behind him to like show off the part. And for a while there, when I was going to trade shows and talking to people and they would ask about the fuse prints, I would always reference, and I can't remember who this was, but someone printed their bike pedals and was using it for months and months and months on the
Luke
which
Plummer.
engineer that was.
It's Luke. And it's cool that it's like maybe a good like little piece of history. Like he was doing it years ago. So for years we have been able to print good parts, and the reliability has really been the struggle. But he designed that part. He rode it on his bike for a long time. And then I think on the website, the bike pedal, the bike pedal is one of the examples we have up there.
Oh, for the stacking demo
exactly.
or something like that. Yeah, that's right. That's so cool. Awesome. And we'll finish up with the last easy one. What's your favorite thing you've ever printed, either on the Fuse or 3 or 2 or 1+?
Yeah. So this is like, I feel like I'm going to show this part, and everyone's say that's such an unexciting part. Can I share my screen? Is that going to work? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Ken_guy, this is a shot from your Instagram. I just happened to see that he posted this. I don't actually know who he is, but this is a part that I guess we are sending as a demo part to customers to try printing. But I designed this like 1 week into my role. One of the guys on the team, we were like just getting some good prints off, and he said like, design something that shows how flexible this material is. And so I went into SolidWorks and I catted this up, having no idea if it was going to like work or anything, but it worked, and it ended up being something that we've kind of printed for years. So I think it's a cool demo, but it's also like probably the most printed thing that I've ever designed. And it's
that's awesome. I didn't know that was yours. I've seen that one around for years. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, like not a lot of thought went into this. It's
sure
like about 10 minutes a model, and I was like, it's parameters look right, probably.
Very cool. Well, I think that's it for me. Seth, thank you so much for your time. This was really great. Hopefully we'll have you back again soon, and in the office maybe we can do some cool videos from the Fuse area once everyone's around again. But
yeah, I mean, I'd love to show off parts. Like we just have walls and walls of parts, and it'll make for a good video.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day, and talk to you soon.
You too. Thanks, Dan.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Dan. You did a really great job at that interview. Yes, that part is very cool. I know Seth sort of tossed it off in an afternoon, but I've held it and played at that part, and it's really awesome. And the springy sensation is really wild. Cool. Well, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with that interview. Hopefully it was interesting, had some cool stuff in it, and we can move along here. Right before we get into the Q&A and general chatting time. Just wanted to let you guys know, just like last month, I've got a little totally anonymous Google survey in the description below. I looked at it after last month, got some really good feedback. I'm going to highlight that in the next slide. But yeah, it's really helpful for me to know how I can tailor the community roundup to your needs as part of our community. If there's more information you want, more stuff, different stuff, less stuff, please let me know so I know and can keep evolving this session as it moves forward. Like I said, I got some great feedback last week. One of them was more chat interaction, which got it. Trying to do that. Thank you. And also more hands-on demos. Noted. Totally hear where you're coming from. Something I'm going to keep an eye on pretty closely for the future. The more I can get hands-on demos into this session, the better. I'll keep trying to do that. Keep trying to hold cool parts in my hands up to the camera, that sort of stuff. So, yeah, with all that being said, let's get into a little Q&A. If you have any questions about anything, Formlabs related, printers, materials, software, cool stuff you're working on, cool stuff you heard about on the internet, anything like that, throw it into chat. Let me know. Well, I'm happy to answer it. If I don't have an answer to your question, I will at least do my best to direct you to where you can find that. I saw a question from my Wesselak earlier about fuse materials. Let me just bring it up there. Yeah. So, great question. Currently, the only material available for the fuse, I confirmed it while that interview was playing, just so I had a good answer for you, is nylon 12. It's our own sort of in-house formulation of nylon 12. That being said, there's nothing that says we won't be able to get more materials in the future. But right now, the printer's new. We're trying to make sure anyone who gets the printer is able to do exactly what they want with it, or exactly what it's designed to do without, breaking. And we're still figuring out all that stuff, obviously after a lot of testing, but once something is in the field, that's a different beast altogether. So right now, just nylon 12, but that's not to say nothing else in the future. Great question about the fuse. And like I said before, I'll mention it again. We're doing a fuse demo session on Thursday of this week at noon Eastern, totally free. You'll find a sign-up link in the description below for that. We'd love to see you there. We'll be totally focused on fuse. I'll be joined by my colleague who's way more knowledgeable about the fuse than I am. So we should be able to get a bunch of answers to your questions, especially about using the machine. For sure. Alicia, I'm very excited to hear what you think of your Castle Wax experience. If your Form 3B is great, I assume you're doing medical, but if not, are you doing jewelry, dental, something like that? Would love to know, but that's really cool. I hope it goes well for you. It's very soft. That's my advice. So be careful with it as you're taking it off the build platform, things like that, but it's a really amazing, cool material. Making with Steve, great question about the fuse. I believe it is only one layer height. The layer height is roughly equivalent, a little larger than the largest layer height available on the Form 3. You can still get pretty amazing detail out of it, but just by virtue of being sort of a sandy, powdery material, it was never part of the design of the fuse to reach Form 3 levels of accuracy. It's just not realistic for SLA printing at this scale. So, yeah, it'll get pretty astonishing detail, but it's not as tight as you can get on a Form 3 if you're doing jewelry at 25 microns or whatever. Roger. Great question about the model list in Preform. Good to know. I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was a pervasive issue with model list right now, but I trust you that there is. And I can definitely try and get some more information about that. If you want to make sure I can follow up with you, feel free to post on our forums, forum.formlabs.com. We'll get you right there. Start a thread. I'll see it. I manage our forums, and I'll make sure to pass that up the line and hopefully get an answer for you. I just don't want to lose track of it, and it's a great question. I'll also mention we're doing a similar demo session in a few weeks on, I believe, March 16th with the lead, our lead of our software team, And he'll be giving some updates on what's new in the Formlabs software world, preform, firmware, etc. And then we'll also have Q&A time with him as well. So he might be able to offer some more insights on when fixes are coming, things like that. Alicia, doing jewelry mostly, but wanted the option to do dental. Cool, that's awesome. I hope it goes well for you. I've held some really amazing Caswell Wax 4D prints and casts, and they're pretty astonishing. My Westlake, if it says 11's coming soon, then 11's coming soon. That's the answer to that one. I thought 11 was further off. I knew 11 had been in the conversation. 12 for sure. 11 coming soon. Beyond that, nothing to say at this point. Slick Wolf, do you think the main advantage of the new printer like Fuse or MLSA technology is to make the piece that other industries can't do, like complex geometry with crazy topology? That's a really great question, Slick Wolf. I think the main point of the Fuse is the material characteristics of the nylon once it's printed are really, really robust and really strong. As Seth mentioned in that interview, finished parts of the Fuse are printed on the Fuse. So that's probably the main advantage, especially at that size scale too, because it's sort of a worktop size machine. And also I'll mention, you said complex geometry and crazy topology. The other thing is, because during the Fuse print, any bit of powder that's not being cured just sits there until the whole print is done. All Fuse parts are self-supporting, which means you can get really, really crazy geometries that don't need to be assembled afterwards because they're being printed together, which is really, really cool. So it does open up some options for, I hesitate to say very thin features, because the powder is not designed to like print as thin as the resin, but you can get really complex and really weirdly complex because it self-supports itself throughout the entire printing process until you take it out. So you might see on our website some like I said, chainmail pieces that are, all the links were printed interlocked together, and then they come out of the printer and it sort of unfolds. It's really, really neat. Fuad, I apologize if I'm saying your name incorrectly. Any options for financing the printer? Off the top of my head, I don't believe so, but never say never. The best thing to do is either talk to our sales team if you're within our direct sales range, or speak to your reseller. If you are in a region of the world where we just work through resellers, that's the best way to do that. Let's see. I think I've covered most of the questions. If anyone has anything else, please drop it in chat. I'm happy to hang out for another 10 minutes or so before we finish out for the day. I'll just go back through and see if I missed anything. Cool. You've got one already. Great. Good to hear. Yeah, like I said, never say never. I haven't heard of that happening through our sales team, but might happen. Alois, I'm so glad to hear you might get a Fuse. Just out of curiosity, what sort of work do you do? What would you use a Fuse for? UV cure for Caswell Wax. Great question. Let me get a quick answer. Excuse me 1 second. I just want to make sure I give you the right answer. All of our materials have different cure times, wash times, things like that. I know off the top of my head, because I was just in a meeting about it, that it's 2 5-minute washes with the CW40, once in your dirty resin, and then once in the dirty isopropyl alcohol, and then once in as clean isopropyl alcohol as you can manage to find. 5 minutes each. Any more than that, and you can start to lose some fidelity and structural rigidity of the print. So yeah, stick pretty tightly to that 5 and 5 wash, and you'll be in good shape. Okay. I got confirmation. Sorry about that. No post-cure necessary for Castle Wax 40. So out of the printer, into the wash, and then once it's totally washed off, you're totally good to go on the next step of your casting process. And yeah, I'd love to hear if anyone has any, like, is there a type of material that you'd like to see that Formlabs hasn't made yet? A particular, like, mimicking another material. I know we have some rubber analogs, some silicone analogs, things like that. But I'd love to know if anyone has any sort of blind spots off the top of their head of material properties you'd like to get out of a Formlabs resin that we don't currently offer. Alicia, great to hear. Yeah, like I said, let us know how it goes. If you run into any issues, like I said, post on our forums. I'll make sure your case gets sent up to the right person. We have a dedicated person on our services team who only does castable, and she's been trained on casting processes and things like that. So if you have any issues, she'd be more than happy to help you out. But I think it'll go pretty well. Fuad asks, fuse post-processing is basically removing the excess powder, so almost as easy as FDM. Exactly, yep. So no heat, no light, no wash, nothing like that afterwards. Basically just remove the powder, compressed air to make sure you got all the powder, and then yeah, that's it. It's pretty simple. Like I said, we'll have a video in the session on Thursday that will show that process, and I believe my colleague Jake also did a time lapse of the whole his whole process of taking a cartridge, removing all the powder, cleaning it, resetting it for the next print, all that kind of stuff. It's a very, very simple. I'm not going to say clean because it's still powder. The sift does keep everything pretty contained, but it's a simple process that can produce some really, really amazing parts. Oh, rubber bracelets. Great question. So we do have some materials that are soft-esque. One called elastic, and then there's another one. Flexible, excuse me. Blanked on it for a second there. Elastic and flexible. Flexible is more like a very stiff silicone, and then elastic is like a pretty stretchy material. Both of them can print things like bracelets. That being said, neither of them are rated for prolonged skin contact after they've been printed. So I hesitate to say use those materials for printing wristbands or anything like that. That being said, you could print a mold and then do like low temperature silicone investment casting, and that can produce some really amazing results afterwards without needing to use the actual material, but you'll get a pretty similar result at the end. That's kind of the main caveat of Formlabs resins is they're not, unless they're meant to be in a person's mouth, they're usually not meant to be sort of against skin for a really long time. Let's see. Do we need to fully fill the build chamber when we are printing? I assume you mean for the fuse, and the answer is absolutely not. You can do it in increments, and that's actually an interesting thing about the fuse that's unique compared to all our other material or all our other printers. Is that because the print is sort of going through this cartridge throughout, you can add. Or it's filling a cartridge throughout, you can add prints to the fuse build while it's printing, which is really cool, as long as there's space to go before you get to that point in the build cartridge. But yeah, you can add parts as it goes because it's just filling that cartridge, and then once the cartridge is filled, you remove the whole thing and start cleaning. Jack, welcome back. Glad to see you again. Thanks for joining us. If you're just joining us, you can check out the recording later. I hope you like it. Yeah, Steve, it's really really cool, and new for us because SLA printing is so kind of one and done. If something screws up during an SLA print, you're sort of screwed out of the whole rest of the thing, and you have to clean the build platform, clean the resin tank, make sure you've got enough resin and start over. Whereas the fuse actually gives you quite a bit more freedom and wiggle room in case something goes south during a print. And you can also, 3D pack a bunch of different parts, and our software will automatically fit those pieces together so they don't overlap with each other, but they do fill the build volume. So there's pictures on our website of like stacks of 80 bike pedals all next to each other, and that's where that comes from. All right. Got a few more minutes. If anyone has any last things, I'll mention again. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I realize this is still new. We're still ironing out some kinks. I really appreciate feedback. If you've got a few minutes to let me know what you'd like to see out of the community roundup. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's really fun to come and chat with you guys for a few minutes every month. And we'd love to do more of it. What's a similar material to ABS plastic? Now, there is a great question. Let me bring up some links that I can put in chat for you. Cool. So I just posted in the chat there the link to the tough and durable resin page on our website, and you got a couple options there that will get you pretty close to what you're looking for. I think to get ABS plastic, probably Tough 2000 is the one I would recommend. But all of those there are worth looking at. They all have slightly different mechanical properties. My window keeps closing there. Slightly different mechanical properties, which you can find laid out on our website there. Tension moduluses, things like that. You can find that there, and that'll let you get as close as you can to ABS. The other option, which I'll highlight before we're done for the day, is we have on our website something called the Formlabs Material Selector. So you can get a good look at all of our materials pretty close together to sort of compare and contrast and find which one most closely meets your needs. Because I realize it can be a little overwhelming to find the specific one you're looking for. Cool. I just put the material selector link in there. Alicia, I like the idea for suggestions on rubber. Any suggestions on how to create a mold 3D file from a tire? That's interesting. Yeah, I would say, I think I'm not an expert on silicone molding. Off the top of my head, I believe you'd model a tire in whatever software you want, and then print it in a hard material, just not soft in any way. And then pour silicone around that print, and then remove the two halves like you would for any sort of other investment casting. Pull the print out, throw it away, do whatever you want with it, use it again to make another mold, and then put the halves back together, pour your silicone in, and take it out after it's set. I could be wrong. That's my rough understanding of how silicone molding works. I believe the temperatures involved are relatively low, which makes it not impossible to do as a hobbyist or, without serious injection molding equipment or anything like that. Well, cool, guys. That about does it for my hour. Again, thanks again for joining me. This has been really fun. I think I'll be back on the 23rd of March. I believe that's the date we looked at, so a month from today. I hope to see you all there. This has been really fun. Please bring your questions. Bring cool parts you're working on. If you have a cool part you want to show off to everyone else on stream, bring a link. I'd love to show it off to everyone, and we can talk about it. That's the idea, is to sort of make this just like a community gathering place. So yeah, thanks again. This has been really fun, and have a great rest of your week, everyone. Have a good one.